I remember now the perspective of the one I called God in my video, The Genesis of Genesis. This was the perspective of the one whose soul was enlivening the planet Uranus, and this is the same soul that I referred to as the younger spirit. This was the original ruler of our solar system and our sun before even Saturn was our sun. The younger spirit had an agreement with the elder spirit, that the younger would move aside for the elder after giving his message. I thought that he must have been made to leave so that the elder could come, but I remember exactly what happened now. The younger wasn't made to leave, but was placed in a state of sleep by the Lord. This allowed the elder spirit to become Uranus without sending the younger away. The younger spirit had a unique viewpoint of events on Earth because he saw the world as it was, when very little seemed to have gone wrong. He was then made to sleep and was woken near the end of the conflict on Earth, when Satan's power and influence was truly great. He saw the extent of the changes in our solar system, with none of the middle ground. He went straight from one extreme to the other. When he was woken, the Lord put him to the test by showing him the extent of Satan's works, influence and power, and then telling him to incarnate on Earth at the height of Satan's power. A test of courage and faith. In my video, What Is It That I See?, I detailed the experiences of a child placed in this situation, and I know now that I had incompletely remembered the situation, because what I saw was the experience of the younger spirit as witnessed and experienced by that child, who was a later expression of that same being. I'll detail these events more fully in a later video, but in short, the younger spirit agreed to enter Earth and began to descend, but was instead sent into the past to do the work of the younger spirit, having proven his faith, courage, commitment, and love. He had proven that he was willing to go, so he was sent elsewhere to be made ready to go. Everything could have fallen apart right there, and we'd all be screwed. The younger spirit saw how things were, and then how things had become. The change was staggering. How had Satan caused such devastation? What were his methods? Satan's schemes are numerous, and I don't claim to know them all, but I can give a general outline of his actions and how he so greatly diminished the human race in such a short span of time. He began with easy targets. In particular, he targeted the people who had sex with animals. If there is consent at the level of the soul, then any activity is acceptable under the true law. But it wasn't difficult to convince the people that these were somehow monstrous acts and should be forbidden, that they were disgusting or harmful. He was targeting activities that were enjoyed by a minority and were seen as undesirable by the majority. This is a theme of his work. He causes things to be forbidden by convincing us that they are wrong. This leads people to feel shame. It leads others to regard them with disgust. It causes division and a lack of acceptance, a lack of compassion and understanding. It also causes people to become unfulfilled and resentful. He closes us down and isolates us. He then moves the goalposts and repeats. This process was repeated with the next most marginal groups, but continuing the process required other work. Satan has focused his efforts on attacking children. Children don't know how things used to be, so they can't compare their circumstances to what came before. They have no way of knowing just how much they've been diminished compared to their parents. Satan has gradually been diminishing children, so that all of us become diminished over time. Satan targeted their mental capacity and eroded it until natural psychic abilities began to disappear. Adults had taken for granted their ability to use telepathy, but the children didn't even know that these abilities existed until their parents discussed it with them verbally. How could they know if they had no experience? I remember parents summoning doctors to attend to their children because of this disability. And I remember a doctor who was part of Satan's scheme and knew what was being attempted, examining a child, explaining that he didn't know why they couldn't use these natural abilities, and feeling surprise within himself that such a change could occur so quickly and in so many. At some point, Satan ignited the furnace of his sun, our present sun, and the solar system was reconfigured under the authority of the Father so that the damage could be limited. This new configuration had both night and day so that the earth could rest from Satan's cruel, tormented light. In my video True Healing, I detailed the nature of our present sun and how Satan creates tormented light as the offspring of forced sexual torture in his furnace, our sun. This cruel, tortured light beats down upon the earth and carries a psychic insult which must be processed and gradually twists, distorts, and wears down life on earth. As I've said before, the sun is Satan's celestial rape machine, and where he resides as his seat in the heavens. He glorifies himself above all others in the heavens. We need the light of the sun to live, but our present sun gives us light that is analogous to poisoned water. We grow, but our growth is stunted due to the challenge of processing the poison. I believe he also withholds a type of light which we need for proper nourishment, and which leaves us in a form of starvation, although I don't know in what way. When Saturn was our sun, there was no night, only day. During that golden age, people had no need of sleep. Uranus had been our sun before Saturn for a great length of time, and there was a day and night cycle back then. Geologically, Saturn wasn't our sun for very long at all, but during that time there was abundance everywhere, and sleep was abandoned. Everyone felt refreshed at all times, and in a never-ending day, much could be done and enjoyed. Saturn was positioned in a fixed location in the heavens. His light enveloped the world and nourished all things. The planets were far closer to each other than they are at this time. Saturn was fixed at the celestial pole, the throne of our solar system, which presently lies empty. The Lord would not allow Satan to sit there. When Satan ignited his furnace and took on the role of our present sun, the old pathways which existed in all life on earth were reactivated by the Lord, and sleep returned, to the surprise of most. This was a trade-off on the Lord's part. There was a tremendous amount of lost time in our lives as a consequence, but the sleep gave us time to recuperate from the sun's cruel light and the effects of our daily activities in our newly weakened state. In response to the Lord's establishment of night and day, Satan moved the moon so that it would reflect his cruel light onto the earth even during the night and impact our capacity to truly escape, rest, and recover. Satan was tinkering with the energy field of the earth as a means of influencing the people of earth, although I'm not certain how or for what aim exactly. I suspect that this was part of his work at reducing human lifespans. We used to live far longer lives. The average lifespan was around 1,000 years. Children began to age and die far more rapidly, and the elders didn't understand why. They began to live only a few hundred years. By the time that the elders realized what was happening, it was beyond their power to reverse the problem. The last of the adult population of the human race perished with time, and with very few exceptions, only children remained. We have been reduced so much that none of us live beyond childhood. Where are the people with 500 years of experience? Where is the man with the wisdom of 1,000 years? Children. All that's left are children. As a race, we forgot about the truth of telepathy and thought it myth and fantasy. Lives of 1,000 years were remembered only in scripture. We thought the ancients were foolish and superstitious to worship gods in the heavens. This mindset is well captured in the words of Horatio Grassi. The ignorant mass of the people had considered Venus as a comet. Venus had acted as a comet in the time of confusion I detailed in my video, The Genesis of Genesis. So many of our myths are based in reality. Satan has made us forget. The human race was stripped of its true sun. We were taught to become intolerant and suspicious of each other, to restrict the freedom God gave us all. A new sun poisoned life on Earth and diminished us over time, causing us to need sleep as a means of recovery. This terrible new sun reduced Earth's bounty such that we had to work to find food, and our weather became disturbed such that we had to work to find shelter. Our children were attacked such that their minds were constricted and disabled so that they couldn't even use telepathy, and they became stupid. Their lifespans were reduced so that they would never reach maturity, and our social memory was stripped away as the last of the adults passed on. These were only the beginnings of his works. Satan intensified these assaults and continues to attack our children in an attempt to keep us dumbed down, fearful, hateful, and insecure. We are a ruined civilization of ignorant, fearful children, dying long before our proper time, never reaching maturity, never knowing our true abilities. Our institutions have long been infiltrated and overrun by Satan's subjects, who drive out good people from positions of power and elevate each other, using their authority selectively in order to punish their enemies and protect their allies. Media, academia, politics, business, schooling, every structure of civilization has been hollowed out such that no opposition can arise to his plan. Even religion has been corrupted. He poisons us, but not in ways that we can easily detect, because our knowledge of the world has been framed by his design. He causes us to focus on what he wants us to see, not on what we need to see. He has constructed ideological prisons for our minds and slandered the true God, so that we have learned to hate and ridicule him, and even caused us to think that he never existed. There are good people within these institutions, but if you become influential enough, the perpetrators of the great conspiracy will confront you and make themselves known. They will make you the proverbial offer you can't refuse. Few have the courage to resist, and even fewer live long when resisting. Satan's wicked servants have us so broken and infiltrated that at the highest levels of society, there are institutional child rape and murder rings. The participants in this ritual abuse are protected by our institutions instead of being prosecuted by them. The evil elite live in a completely different world to ours, and by a set of rules that would disgust ordinary people. We are on the brink of utter defeat, but the Lord has not forgotten us. The Lord has not forsaken us. The Lord has promised to break every yoke, and he keeps his promises. If we want to be free of Satan's burdens and healed of his cruel ministrations, then we must change within our hearts and accept the Lord's true nature as our own. We must become accepting of others and find compassion and understanding for each other. We must learn to love once again in the truest sense, so that when the Lord comes, we will not be offended by him. He lives in the truth and is not ashamed of his needs or ours. In our present state, how could we accept such a being? We would reject him all over again, the precious Lamb of God. For this people's heart has grown callous. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. The Industrial Revolution was the work of many servants of light, and eased our burdens for a time, so that we could better make this great choice. Lifespans increased again, health improved, knowledge flowed, rights were protected, wealth accrued, and people had time to consider and think. But Satan works to undo all of those advances. He seeks to bring the whole world fully under his dominion. He scorches us with his terrible light and wages war against the carbon dioxide which has protected us. If possible, he hopes to beat us into submission so that he can keep us as his subjects and use us to spread his stain throughout the universe. We must choose between the light and the darkness. In order to choose, we must know the true nature of each and search our hearts to determine where our loyalty truly lies. All the best.